Welcome to the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, brought to you by the umbrella school, Start Academy. We empower and equip you to cultivate the authentic homeschool lifestyle where freedom and relationships rule.
Welcome back to the Essence of Homeschooling. Kim, Michelle, and myself are going to discuss the years from around third grade to sixth grade. This is a time more based on the development of each child, not specifically your child's grade. So don't focus too much on the grade level, but focus more on where your child is and their developmental stages. This time period between third to sixth grade is really a time of transition from learning to read to reading to learn. And this is also when abstract thinking begins to kick in. Sometimes when we approach these grades and we have a couple years of homeschooling under our belts, this is a time where we're like, okay, we're going to add a lot more. We're going to really go deep on subjects. And it's tempting to overload the kids and forget they're still little kids in these grades. So don't forget that the focus of all of the elementary years, including grades 3 to 6, is still reading, writing, and math. You're still laying a foundation for future study. Your student will learn much better in the upper grades if they can read and write well. And you do want your student to have a love of learning and a curiosity still. So tonight we're going to discuss some subjects and curriculum that you can use during these middle elementary years. So we can start with math. Kim and Michelle, what are your thoughts on math concepts and curriculum for these grades?
I think the concepts still have to do with the basic addition and subtraction, but you're going to be adding in multiplication and division, fractions, decimals, percents. Place value is going to be really important to remind them where things belong. We used to play with houses for place value and have the tens go in one house, the ones go in another house, the hundreds go in a different house. And we used to have little games we'd play for when you add, they go to the other house to help. And even when you subtract, you have to know, do you have enough people in that house or do you need help from a higher house up? And so understanding that place value, because then they have to know where a zero sits. Zeros are really important in place value. So even simple geometry will come into it with just solve for x. What plus 4 equals 12 is the basic concept of how to solve for that unknown. And then when they do get into the higher grades in algebra, it's already a fun game of solving for the unknown.
And I think that it's important too to have that attitude about math that is really positive, and you approach it as a puzzle, as a game, as logic. So any kind of logic or math games that you can find, all of those you can find, the better. Whether you just play them for their own sake or use it to bounce off of. Measurement is also important too, and you can use that in daily life, whether you're talking about length and weight and volume and perimeter, or whether you're starting with the metric system. We're one of 3 countries in the world that still use English system. Everywhere else, they're going to be looking at metric system, or when you get into the sciences, they're going to need to be familiar with that. But it's not just the metric system for that, the sake of that. It also helps them understand, again, the system, the tens system, and even some place value kinds of things. So it's another helpful thing for them to learn.
And as homeschoolers, we can always do math in daily life, whether we're making something in the kitchen, whether we maybe want to rearrange a room, fit in different furniture. You could have your child measure the room, decide whether the piece of furniture will fit against a wall, whether you're doing laundry, whether you take them to the park. You could have them count certain things. You could have them even do things combine it with PE, track your steps, and then do some math with that. There's a lot of ways to use math in daily life as a homeschooler that isn't sitting and doing a work sheet or working out of a book.
And I still like to encourage a lot of mental math, not using calculators in these grades, because they're still going to need to have the concept down of how to add and what adding means and know what things make 10, know what makes 20, being able to do those things in their head. Even though I laugh that my oldest reminded me recently that I had told him he needs to know all this because he won't be carrying a calculator in his pocket. Lo and behold, I am not a prophet, so we are carrying calculators in our pockets with our phones. But the idea of mental math is still very important because we don't want to be doing basic math with a calculator when it should be something we should be able to add and subtract and multiply and divide. Those times tables are still really important. And we mentioned in the lower elementary years that you can do it with songs. Even third through sixth grade, songs are still great teaching tools and ways to learn math facts.
Sometimes kids might understand maybe, say, 75%, 80% of their times tables. And I've had parents get stuck there and say, well, I can't move on to division because they don't know all their math facts yet. So sometimes I'll say, no, go ahead and move on, because as you work on the division, you're automatically going to be practicing your multiplication and so on. And then moving from that into fractions, even if it's not 100% mastery, it's okay to move ahead. In upper elementary, this kind of speaks to that. It might be okay if a kid needs to use a calculator because they understand the concept. It's more of just getting the higher math things done a little more quickly. But that's really toward the end of upper elementary. I think lower grades, you want to stay away from that and really push the rote memorization if you can.
And using manipulatives for those are always great so that they can visualize. We've talked before about the different types of learners: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. The manipulatives will help a visual learner see how these things, think of that. How big is a million is pretty incredible to think of. So even the little games, put a bunch of marbles in a jar, let them guess how many are in the jar, things like that, to get an idea of things that seem a little more abstract at first, but manipulatives are always good because it helps visualize math.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into different curriculum ideas that are out there. One that I thought of right away that is really terrific with manipulatives is the Right Start math. Very visual, very kinesthetic. They use an abacus, 3D models that you build that comes with it. They have all sorts of games, different ways to teach their concepts. And there's a high amount of parental involvement in Right Start math because of the way that they teach. The lessons are short, so it's definitely doable. That definitely is one that comes with some terrific games and hands-on activities.
Math U-See is another one that is a lot of hands-on for a parent, but it still has videos and manipulatives in a workbook that you can still assign some things. It helps them see it, hence the name Math U-See.
Saxon Math also uses manipulatives all the way through sixth grade. It's a repetitive and incremental approach, and you can choose to supplement with Nicole, the math lady, who teaches each lesson and grades the work, but you don't have to. Life of Fred was another fun one that we did in the elementary grades. It's a story-based program, and you follow Fred throughout his life. My kids really enjoyed that.
It's super quirky and fun. If that's the way your kid thinks, it really helps them to understand math a lot more easily. I have a friend whose child took it all the way up through the very end of the series. And when he tested into his college math class, he tested into something like the second year of his college math. I think kids that really do well with Life of Fred can go far.
Some other popular math options are Singapore math. It's very focused on mental math. Abeka, which is typically a rigorous program about a year ahead of the norm. On all of these, feel free to cross off practice problems. Don't feel like just because there's 30 problems on the lesson, you have to do all 30 problems. Some other options are Horizons Math, which is part of Alpha Omega. It's another rigorous program, but a little more broad based. There are fewer practice problems, but more concepts to cover. And another idea would be to make sure to know that you can break up lessons into multiple days. You don't have to do one lesson per day. You have the flexibility to change all of these math programs to meet your child's needs.
But it does help to have a math curriculum because it helps you know what concepts logically come next and how to teach in a way that a kid is going to keep moving forward in a steady progression without jumping all around or being introduced to fractions when they're not yet ready. They don't understand that concept yet. So this is definitely one area we usually do highly recommend a curriculum, and then supplement with nature, baking, life skills, whatever it is, make math fun, but it does help to have guidance through a curriculum. But like Stacy was saying, and like Kim and I always say, you are the boss, the curriculum is not. You make the curriculum work for you.
That's right.
Stacy, you've done the classical method. What kind of is their focus with curriculum?
So the classical method treats math like all the other subjects, using the Socratic method of teaching by asking questions. Teachers don't necessarily show the student how to get from the question to the answer, but they have the student build that path themselves by asking them to think about the next step in each part of the problem. It takes their past knowledge and uses reasoning to get to the next step. So they ask questions in math like, okay, here's your problem. 2 plus 2. What do you see? I see digits. I see a sign. I'm familiar with 2. This is, the student can talk about what they already know in that problem. And then by asking questions, they can make a path from each part of the problem to the answer.
So is there a curriculum that goes with that?
Jackson Math is a big one. I know Classical Conversations has a new math curriculum just this year. I don't know much about it. I believe it's called the Math Map. Brand new, but it's another option out there for classical.
So have you guys heard much about the good and the beautiful?
Yes, a lot of my families that I do evaluations with use the good and the beautiful for math and all sorts of subjects. I really like it personally. I think that it's really aptly named. It is good and it's beautiful. It's just lovely to look at. And it also presents the lessons in small bites. So kids aren't overwhelmed with pages and pages of black and white math problems. There's just small areas they touch on. So it's a spiral method, and they just keep practicing, a little practice every day. And it's very gentle. It's a very delightful curriculum. A lot of people love it.
And then there's also several online options. We don't always recommend online options for this age because there's something about writing things down that helps solidify information. Yet we also know every family is different. A relatively new one is CTC Math, and it's getting good reviews. There are video lessons and problems to solve, and it does grow with your child. And the great thing with that particular program is you have access to everything. Even if your child is working on fractions, but you're like, they understand the fractions, we don't need to keep doing this. You can move on to decimals, or if they're really getting concepts, you can move on to certain algebra concepts as well. So you get access to the whole library of math, not just the grade level.
I think they have some good pricing for homeschoolers specifically, right?
You can see there a lot of like what is HSLDA often has discounts for CTC math.
Another online program that gets really good reviews is Mr. D Math. They're known for being not only just a good math program, but they're also very responsive. Back when it first started, I think he was the only teacher, but now he's branched out and there's more of a team that he works with. And he has several different levels of math. And I think he's into grammar and some other things, SAT prep too. Actually, he was really smart. He turned his program into an official education program. He was able to get his things WASC accredited, which is a big deal. It's a hard thing to get. I've been in schools that have gone through WASC accreditation process, and it's very intensive and rigorous, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops. It's impressive that he is WASC accredited. We have to remind people that curriculum is not accredited. Schools are. Technically, it's his school, quote unquote, that is accredited, but we're focusing on his curriculum. That's the main piece of it here. So I think that was a really smart move on his part. And again, it gets very good reviews.
And I know of teaching textbooks, but when I had a kid do it, we had DVDs or CDs they put in the computer. Is it fully online now? Do you know?
I believe so. I think you can use the CDs if you have them. I think they still are getting passed around in homeschool circles.
Sure, with used curriculum.
I think that what they're selling now is just the online version.
My only caution with that one is it tends to not be very rigorous. Often I found that it tended to be more of a grade behind. That even if my kid was in 6th grade, I should have had him in 7th, sometimes 8th grade math. So pay attention, take placement tests to find out where your kids fall in any curriculum you choose to use.
Absolutely. And even when we used it with my kids, and I even had bumped them ahead a couple of grades, they were still behind. So when my son went to take the SAT later on, when we were doing some test prep for that, there were some concepts that he was not familiar with. So we had to backtrack a little bit and do some work on Khan Academy, which is another program. That's the free online program. And it's aligned with the College Board, which puts out the SAT test. We had to play a little catch up there. So that's just something to remember. If you decide to use teaching textbooks, just be aware. And Khan Academy, a lot of people use that as their only curriculum. If your kid likes that style of teaching, we use it as a supplement. If my kid doesn't understand it this way, I'll try that way. I'll see what Khan has to say.
My daughter still uses it in college.
No kidding. That's good to know.
Because it's just helpful for the concepts.
Good to know. So another one that has come up a lot with my evaluations, talking to a lot of families, is Beast Academy. And it's another relatively new option. It's very rigorous, but it's very child friendly because it uses a lot of games and cartoons. Because it's rigorous, it's another one of those that you want to make sure that you have your child take the placement test for, or even start at their first level and kind of work your way through so you understand the way that they teach math. The downside to it is some people may not necessarily care for the graphics because they're like little monster cartoons. So it's just a personal call. It's up to you. But they have a sort of a comic book style and an online version. Even though we don't necessarily prefer on typically, like Michelle, you were just saying, in Beast Academy, sometimes there are better reviews than the comic book style. But regardless, it's known to be a good program as far as the math goes. When kids are done with the Beast Academy, they have a sister program called Art of Problem Solving, which is very rigorous. I've seen a 9-year-old doing math that was extremely advanced, like calculus, trigonometry type stuff. The way they teach is so precept upon precept that it leads kids into this higher math. I think your child has to be wired for math. So keep that in mind. But if your child really is truly terrific at math and they love it, it might be a program to look at.
Welcome to Start Academy. We are an umbrella school that fulfills legal reporting requirements for homeschoolers in Colorado. But all of our services like transcripts, diplomas, IDs, and coaching are available no matter where you live. Don't forget to check out our store for homeschool essentials like attendance logs, planners, report cards, and DIY high school transcripts. Whether you need help with paperwork, planning, support, or guidance on your homeschool journey, Start Academy is here to support you. Visit theumbrellaschool.com to learn more.
So the next subject that we can cover tonight is language arts. This would include grammar, vocabulary, spelling, and reading. Get your kids their own library cards, use your library card, go to the used bookstore, go to the bookstore, have a quiet time in the morning, in the afternoon, whatever works with your family. Model reading books yourself while your kids read books. You can read at bedtime. You can read at breakfast. Just read and read some more. You can offer goals. You can offer celebrations. Really, there's no wrong way to read with your children and have your children read to learn.
Mm-hmm. And still enjoy read alouds where you're reading the book to them, or you can even use audiobooks to do that. So you can all sit down and eat lunch together and listen to the book. Reading at a level that's a little bit higher than your kids' level is really important because it teaches them so much vocabulary. It teaches them good storytelling, subject and plot and setting and symbolism and metaphor. And reading those aloud will help you have the conversations with your kids about those different things.
If you feel like your child would respond well to something like a book report, you could do that. It could be a narration, it could be a written book report, it could be an art project that they do about the book, it could be a diorama, it could be a play that they put on about the book, it could be making a food that was described in the book. You can use anything that would grab their attention from the book to reinforce what they've learned while they're doing another project, book report, play, something about the book.
Because the issue with language arts is not just the ability to read, but the ability to comprehend what you're reading. So by doing these projects or just having a narration where they tell dad at the end of the day what they learned is a way that they're going to make the connections. And you can, through that, find out how much they really understand in what they're reading or in what I'm reading aloud. Because comprehension is going to be very important come the later school years, certainly high school, but even middle school. Being able to comprehend what you read is a strong skill, but it needs practice as well.
Absolutely.
But we also think there's plenty of ways to play with language arts. Play with the spelling. Bananagrams is one, Scrabble. Anything to practice spelling is always good. Even for vocabulary, for adjectives and things like that, use Mad Libs. The stories that you guys create together can get really funny with the adjectives, the nouns, the verbs that you choose to use. Riddles are fun because you get an idea of how their brain thinks when you're working through a riddle. So other than books, what kind of curriculum would you guys recommend?
I have been very partial to Beautiful Feet over the years for a lot of different grades and subjects. They have literature-based curriculum. They have history packages that you can buy that include timelines, a teacher book, a list of literature books, projects that you can do. It's a wonderful way to incorporate your history study with your language arts.
It's one of my favorites too.
For grammar, usually in the lower grades, we say you can really teach grammar and mechanics organically, really is the best way to do it because you can get bogged down in that really fast and it can be a little bit abstract. But around maybe third, but fourth grade or so on up, you want to start thinking about working on some grammar. A good curriculum that I really like is just called Easy Grammar. I have tried all kinds of grammar curriculum in the classroom, teaching my own kids and just trying things out. I keep coming back to Easy Grammar. I saw the author speak at a teachers convention many years ago, and I was fascinated with her approach. It's completely unique. She starts with teaching kids prepositions. And so you start the book and you're learning this list of, I don't know, 30, 35 prepositions. And we turned it into a game to see who could memorize the list and say it the fastest. And we would use a little timer. It was super fun. We would cheer each other on when we got to 7 seconds, 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Once the kids know what the prepositions are and how to spot them and really what they are like in real life, like you would play with things like there's a cup on the desk and there is the walnut underneath the cup. Is it on top of the cup? And so we would sort of segue from there to the preposition, from the preposition to what is the object of the preposition. And then from there to teach it, because it really is a black and white curriculum, not a lot of color in it, we would take our rulers and cross off the prepositional phrases first. So that is the magic that she starts with, this author. By getting rid of the prepositional phrases, it's much easier for the students to spot the subject and the verb. Then you mark those out, and from there, direct object, and so on. It's very systematic and easy for kids to understand. They get a sense of accomplishment out of realizing they can dissect a sentence. When I tell them, I wasn't doing this kind of thing until I was in college, their eyes just get so big, feeling good about themselves, because it is an easy way for them to look at a sentence and immediately break it down and understand it. I really like Easy Grammar for that reason. It also has a sister program called Daily Grams, which is 10, 15-minute daily practice in about 5 different areas. You can use that as a standalone in the upper grades once you get past their basic books, or alongside it daily, once a week, twice a week. So you have that spiral teaching as you go. Those are 2 of my favorite curricula for grammar.
I also liked a lot of the critical thinking company books, like Word Roots, or they have the red herring mysteries, different things that help your kids play with words. And it's just a short vocabulary lesson. And the red herring mysteries were working out riddles to understand the different ways people use the English language.
Yeah, that's a great publisher. I really like that as well. And Word Roots, anything teaching a child how to dissect a word is cross-curricular, because once they can understand what the parts of a word means and can figure out what the bigger word is, they can figure out words like deoxyribonucleic acid in science, big things like that. It definitely helps them build a good foundation.
We mentioned the good and the beautiful with math, but they also cover every subject, don't they?
Yes. And the nice thing about the good and the beautiful is they also have quite a bit of free curriculum. You just go on their site and look at their free resources, and it's really amazing what they offer for free. I think you have to print out what you want, so there's that expense, but it's nice to have that option.
Some spelling ideas would be all about spelling, a reason for spelling, or spelling you see. These would all be spelling books that follow a logical phonetic pattern, not just a random list of spelling words. If your child seems to be a natural speller, which a lot of the time good readers often are, there is more of the organic approach that we've discussed in the past. And then you can focus on words that they tend to get stuck on, words that are specific to what they're reading or words that are specific to what they're learning in other subjects, and use it more organically versus a list in a book. This would definitely be one of the subjects that I would tailor to your particular student's learning style and developmental stage.
And there's some other more unit study based type of curriculum ideas. One is a gentle feast, a Charlotte Mason style curriculum. It includes all subjects except for math. It's literature based and good for large families. Others are Gather Round and one called Campfire Curriculum. So those are fun to check out.
Really, all of these are going to be including books to read, things to study, practice spelling, narration, parts of speech, but they're fun ways to do all of that. And also including reading comprehension, because that's an important skill at this level.
Yes.
One classical curriculum that I forgot to mention was Susan Wise Bauer's curriculum, Writing with Ease, which then goes up to Writing with Skill. That's a popular one for classical method.
We didn't really talk a whole lot about writing, did we? I know in lower grades, we talked about doing it very organically to an extent, even to upper elementary school. You can still do it organically, have them write their own stories, write emails, write book reviews, things like that. Sometimes you do feel a need to have an actual curriculum to give you a little bit of guidance.
And one caveat I encourage parents to do is if kids are writing for fun, let them write for fun. Don't grade it.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do is go through the writing and notice what they commonly misspell, what punctuation skills they don't seem to understand. We need to teach them what's a sentence, what's a phrase, what's a clause, complete thought, and what's not. And how does a paragraph go together? It's not about 3 different topics, it's about one topic and then can lead into another. But let them write for fun. Don't grade that. Use actual curriculum or work that you assign to be what's graded.
Mm-hmm. Or if you do, even if you curriculum or no curriculum, just focus on 1 or 2 things to correct at a time. Otherwise, it just becomes a big blur in their minds. They're not going to remember it. 1 or 2 things, though, that's different.
And
Go easy.
We don't want to discourage them from using their creativity and their imagination. They can be the funniest stories that don't connect at all, but it's great entertainment for them and for your family.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all applicable links and additional resources. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you great content. Until next time, happy homeschooling.